I'm back for another review of Love and Marriage Huntsville, season 10, episode 2. I am Ken-ough. Okay, so if you're watching this, first of all, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for all your support. I really appreciate it. Okay, I'm just gonna keep it real. This episode was boring as hell. I should have known. Okay, because the first episode was kind of good. All right. So we start off with Trish and Ken. Trish and Ken, y'all gonna have to pick it up. Because anytime Marquez comes into play, we gonna get a lot of fuck shit for no reason. All right. So Trish and Ken, they're going out to meet with Kimmy and Maurice. Talk about the blind leading the blind. Okay? Even though we never got to see how that scene truly ended with Marquez popping off with her friend, with Trish's friend and Trish. Where was the daughter? Where was the daughter? I would actually feel a little bit better if they just had her face blurred out. Like, does she have a key to get into the house and she let her father in? Like, this is what I mean by staged, okay? Anyway, I have questions. Because she is clearly now in, like, the teenage years. She probably has a key to her house. So they're meeting with Kimmy and Maurice because they think they've been through something similar. They have no answers. They don't have it figured out because Maurice doesn't spend any time with his son. Ken-ough didn't have to change. Linebacker built Ken-ough did not have to change. And Kimmy is practically raising monster. She has a husband by definition. As Maurice is under the impression by simply having his son in his house during his teenage years, he is doing his job as a father, which could not be further from the truth. Okay, and that's why I feel like that little boy, and this is just my presumption, okay? Like I said, I'm an armchair. I can't tell. But that boy does seem depressed. He really does to me. I don't think he's happy. Not that he's unhappy with Kimmy, but he's essentially being forced to be with his father for his father's ego. And Kimmy is doing the emotional labor as Maurice would have it done. So Ken says, he doesn't like being angry and getting into it, so on and so forth. But they got into a shouting match. Like I said, I get Ken. I like Ken. I know people don't. Y'all don't have to tell me how much y'all don't like him. But I like Ken because I think he, we all, to some degree, if we have any ounce of conscience, we'll attempt in our lives to overcompensate at times because we want to fulfill aspects of our humanity. And maybe, he does a lot for the family because for whatever reasons, he can have his own biological children. Like, look, he's not alone. All right, anyway, so Ken says that him and Marquez were in a good place, but you'll have a good moment with him, and then he essentially shows his ass. Marquez is a manipulator. He's a bitch. He has boy pussy, like whatever you want to call it. I can't. So Trish told the story of Marquez barging in, and all I could think was, Trish, you're putting 20 on 10. You're trying to make $1 out of 15 cents. Because I'm going to keep it real. I'm going to let you have that one. But okay, he didn't knock. I wouldn't say barge in. You need to ask your daughter where her key was and then tell her that her father is not allowed to come through the door. Okay? Like other people saying a stepdad. Like Portia described. Like Kevin Hart described. Anyway. So Kimmy, please have... Kimmy, please leave that matronly, I'm going on vacation with my husband lingerie at home that you had on that confessional. I know I'm not the only one that saw it. I know I can't be the only one that struck me as, what are you wearing? Okay. Don't try to wear it in a confessional like it's an outfit. Save it for Maurice or your side piece, better yet, because I'd actually be happy. Kind of the way I was relieved when I at least heard the rumor that Yandy had a side piece, like kind of like, oh, good. Gosh, I'm so tired of certain people getting embarrassed all the time. Anyway, but don't try to convince us it's an outfit, darling. Anyway, Trisha Marquez said, I'm sorry, not Trisha Marquez. Trish said Marquez got hostile with her friend immediately. I said yes and no. Okay. The friend had a little heavy in her voice. She got a little rah-rah with him too. First, y'all see what happens when two people don't like each other and the way stories get told. That's why I can't. The only people I'm ever willing to deal with that with is my siblings. That's it. Like literally only within my immediate family. Okay, well, I even deal with that kind of stuff. And I know people will say, yeah, I'm still friends with so-and-so. She's never done anything to me. Actually, that's the reason why I feel like people can't be neutral. They can't be. You riding with me or you riding with them, and that's the way I see it. Okay, it's different even with a coworker, but typically people, I'm just saying, that's why you got to side with somebody. And I'm just saying that to make the point that Maurice was trying to ride both sides of the fence and he got what he deserved at that bullshit ass office of his. But anyway, so Kimmy said the key to getting along is getting along. I said, Kimmy, I have fourth graders who make me little gifts like this. This is a dog and he has a little vest. And my student made this for me for my birthday. It's at a pipe cleaner. She's so sweet. But I'm just saying, like that, even my fourth graders could come up with something better than that. I don't even know what the hell that means. Okay, but let's just give it a go. That apparently means letting Maurice triangulate you and Ken-ough while she triangulates him with her second husband, and you do the heavy lifting and emotional labor and motherly labor with Monster, even though you've already raised your son well. Okay? Anyway, he can't give you, neither one of them can give credible advice because he has a woman that will shut down. Maurice has Kimmy who will shut down and get silent and keep the peace and do the motherly stuff while he's out getting DUIs. And then pretend on TV like everybody else is just overreacting, so on and so forth. Miss me with the BS. They can't give anybody any advice. Didn't I tell y'all these are the most uncredentialed people who feel the need to give advice that they would not take on their best day? Anyway, so Maurice's need to give advice, as far as I'm concerned, while living raggedy is nauseating. Okay, it's nauseating. Maurice says there's a reason why he's acting like Marquez is acting the way he's acting. I said, of course there's a reason. But we're not talking about a child where we all have to sit here and psychoanalyze and try to figure out what's at the root of the behavior. He's an adult and he is responsible to figure that out. You can go and pay your money to your therapist, your psychoanalyst, like I do every week to deal with problems, okay? Because that's not other adults' responsibilities. All right, so going to the Scots for advice was a terrible idea. They came up with no answers, no solutions, and neither did Trish and Ken. Although I'm not convinced that they were trying to have solutions. I was confused while they were telling Ken that he was supposed to be cold. And then Trish had on that brown pleather jacket. I'm not saying the jacket wasn't cute, but never mind. Somebody gonna get mad at me. Oh well, so Martell, bowling ball head, Martell. He is going to look for furniture for his investment property. That's the one where he was digging that garden, I guess. Anyway, the one that he couldn't sell to anybody because they got in that ghetto hood rat season at his property and scared off them white people. Anyway, Ariane, his side piece, is going to move in because they talked about growing their lives together. First of all, we know how much of a liar Martell is. Martell, is it your home or investment property to show someone who will buy it? Because I felt like he was low-key squatting and the way he was making it sound was like, okay, well, I'm buying furniture, to show it and sell it, because that's what an investment property is. Otherwise, you say it's my home and I'm investing in it. And that's that kind of stuff narcissists do, liars do. That's all I'm saying. So that seemed to be a weird way to describe it at the least. Now, he should have a good-sized home anyway, especially since he had 4 kids with his wife, in addition to the other kid. Okay, they came through his side piece. And so they can come and visit regularly and be familiar. But he's been living from pillar to post as far as I'm concerned, and he hasn't shown us anything different, especially after he was squatting in Fletcher's property. since Mel left, and he doesn't have it like that. You can tell he doesn't have it like that. So I was like, are they becoming roommates, or are they arranging something financial? Because now that Mel's money isn't working, to supply his side pieces, little gifts and shit, we're starting to see that he has nothing. Okay, but she is just this close to being mentally retarded. And no, I'm not talking about people who have real mental challenges. We can say that about her because we know she's not retarded. Like, Okay, but it's not like the same thing as having like a diagnosis, okay? Anyway, so they're becoming roommates or of some sort to save cost. Sounds like a downgrade to me, but then again, I think those people deserve to be in a perpetual downgrade. But Destiny is meeting him for furniture to buy for different stuff. This is a perfect example of birds of a feather flock together. These are some low, underachieving individuals who perpetually underachieve. Okay. So Destiny said she's moving downstairs from the basement. Maybe that's not what she said. I know what I said, and I know somebody will be like, now how can you do that? Destiny can, because she just keeps down and down. Anyway, I don't give a shit. Apparently she's going to create a little storefront to sell her hair grease or something. I don't know. Anyway, he's moving Arion's daughter and their son that they had together into his property. Is this really his property? Or is this like his property and like maybe Lance and Chris, and then like Chris Jr. and then Chris Sr., like stuff like that? There was a lot of people in on it, and they trying to help him because he's trying to get his life together. Anyway, he's moving them into the property. I was like, where's her house? Wasn't she living in a house when she was on her ghetto phone with her hair not done? Where is the expensive car you bought her with Mel's earnings? Right. Okay, so trying to bring her up to get back at Mel is clearly what he's doing. But honestly, Martell, all of that talking about it is giving broke. It's giving broke. The furniture kind of seemed like showroom stuff anyway, which is fine when you're showing a room. Not when you're trying to convince us you are moving somebody in, but okay. He said they can't live together until they're married because Destiny shows up at the store, of course, looking for furniture for her storefront because she's moving down from the basement. Okay, until they're married. But this is clearly an arrangement to help with finances because I'm sure he has child support payments. But that kind of dumb broad is not like Mel, where she's going to demand from the court that he takes care of him. He's just going to do that Jedi mind trick, which ain't hard. In the words of Peter Gunn, when he was talking about Amina. Anyway, he can't live with her because he has all those other basic chicks he sleeps with in Huntsville and surrounding areas who are just happy to sleep with somebody who's on a reality show, while he tries to convince himself that he's straight. I said it. I don't care. I said it. I meant it. I'm here to represent it. Anyway, Destiny asked him about rings. Well, have you looked at rings? And he was like, yeah, I've been looking at them for a little bit. In other words, he Googled cocktail rings and something came up. Okay? Anyway, and the stretch con, just in case he has, because he don't feel like taking her measurements. She is, I'm sure she's in many ways dull now. Because now he can have her. And she's willing to take anything from him. And that's not always fun to a narcissist. Presumably. Okay, I don't have the degree. All my degrees are in history. They are not in psychology. Anyway, he said his divorce is fresh. I was like, fresh? It's been some years. Don't get me wrong. I can understand the perception of fresh. But my thing is, you had Arion in particular by your side throughout your marriage. Y'all been together like 10 years. Like, what is going on? And Destiny was like, you're stuck. Because you're bringing that up like it happened yesterday. And don't get me wrong, healing in terms of emotional damage sometimes can take years. Okay, years. From romantic relationships, certainly marriages, I imagine, even though I've never been married. And even in terms of like growing up, like I tell you, I go to therapy, like things that I experienced as a kid, like I'm in therapy, like each week discussing that. Anyway, so, and it just hit me as he was talking. I was like, damn, Martell and Mel are still young. Because Martell is older than her, and he's only 43. I was like, wow, Mel has accomplished so much. But they do honestly have a lot of life left to live. He said he doesn't like counseling. Surprise. Therapy only works if you want to be a better person. A narcissist just wants to do things the way they want to do them. They even see their therapist as supply if they can. Anyway, he asked her about Lance, and she said they fizzled out. They were dating. And I'm just wondering, although I can understand why Destiny may feel a way. I don't know what the way is, but she feels it. Does it count to say he had a baby on her if they weren't really together? I'm not, it doesn't sound like they were in love, because I can see how that could totally break somebody's heart. Anyway, Martell says he wants to coach Destiny to help her get a man. No, Martell, I think you should be honest with yourself and say you want to get a man. Moving on. Marcel, for the 10th season in a row, let me tell you something. If I can give you anything, you are consistent with your performance on this reality show and the scenes you're in. We see Marcel where we always see him in a hard hat in the midst of an unfinished project with no real visible progress. For all we know, he could just be filming on somebody's subdivision that's about to be developed. So Marcel says Maurice and Kimmy need to get on the same page because they each tell him something different. It doesn't matter, Marcel. You're a slow builder and you're lying. And I'm sure Maurice and Kimmy are on two different pages. And he's like, that's what makes it hard. But you don't finish your projects. And apparently the city of Huntsville continuously, even in that one-horse buggy town, they have time to put y'all with citations. Now, see, I would be personally offended as a black person if, like, it just kept showing up, like, city citations at the NAACP office or the National Urban League, because then I would know what was going on. But at this point, especially being in a city, a small city like that, where you have, like, one black college, like, Alabama A&M or something like that, it's just giving poor business acumen. Anyway, so Tisha said, listen to Kimmy, and he was like, well, she doesn't have a plan. That's in his sexism. He doesn't want to listen to it. Marcel starts too many projects with no clear ending date. I know y'all know that, but I just figured I'd say it. He hasn't built Tisha's brokerage office. After he pushed her out of her own office, Tisha, y'all are on some BS. And the thing is, Tisha, I would be going up for you harder because anybody who knows, who has watched me watching the show, I have lost respect for Kimmy because I actually did see Kimmy as a very reasonable person. And then when you go back and rewatch some of those seasons, even when she was calling Mel bougie, which initially you start to think to yourself, well, that kind of seems like an overreaction for Mel to cry. And then I thought about myself and how people have presumed things about me growing up in a struggling economically family, and where education, I was very dependent on that in terms of what I could do to have a better life. And by the grace of God, I've certainly had a better life. But I know what it is to struggle. And people presume because you're smart that somehow your parents must be, well-to-do. And they were not. They weren't. And quite frankly, forms of poverty do traumatize you, right? Like the not knowing how the money's going to work out, or your parents not being able to buy things for you, or your mother wanting to get you something but she can't. And I just say that to say, when they accuse Mel of being bougie, like initially you might say, oh, it's an overreaction. But somebody who has really worked the way Mel has, only to have people still perceive her that way, that can be hurtful. Anyway, so then Tisha, of course, she has to bring up her toxic ass mother-in-law, which is when Marcel does say some true stuff, but he's an ass. Anyway, Wanda, and she's talking about celebration of life and life events. Marcel said there is plenty of room for Wanda, because Tisha starts talking about where her room is going to be in this house that we know is not going to be finished, that has surpassed Chateau Charest in terms of what we at least thought was delusion for a few years, but eventually got built. I don't see this shit ever getting built. I really don't. And Marcel was like, yeah, there's plenty of room for her. It's 10 acres and she can live near the animals and she can talk. A deer to death. Okay, so Marquez and Maurice. This, once again, another example of the blind leading the blind. And they both fall into the ditch. I ain't had that much tequila that I don't remember my Bible verses. Don't get me started. Anyway, Maurice is still pretending that his office is his bachelor pad. We know your office is your bachelor pad. Cut it out. Masquerading as an office, especially since credit one fell through. You're supposed to help people with their credit and in your business boulevard. So forget Marquez. It would still be the blind leading the blind. Anyway, so then, true to form, Maurice invites Marquez down so he can engage in a toxic conversation with another toxic male, like he's done for Martell over and over again, and attempt to undermine any woman that has a problem with this toxic piece of trash. So, Ken, as you watch this back, please take note and then see Maurice's punk ass for it, because this is the kind of person that was gossiping with you and then sits down with this mother sucker. You saw him at that cookout. You know he's touched. Anyway, Marquez stays looking for sympathy, and I can't stand a corny, weak ass punk bitch like that. Okay, it's that Ray J shit, like I told y'all last week. I can't stand that shit. So his divorce is playing out. Whatever. Divorces happen. I know it's hard, especially on the kids. Marquez said that divorce papers said they don't have any minor children. And if he signs the divorce papers, he has to prove that he actually has minor children. I don't know what to think about this other than he doesn't know what he read and maybe on Donald Trump's reading level. Did y'all see Jerome Powell read the... First of all, Jerome Powell cracks me up just because he's a white man with a black name. And then the way he just sat there and did that white man. I have seen white men do that stuff before when something's just dead wrong. No. You're talking about from 5 years ago. And then Trump talking about how bad he is at his job. Can Trump read? I don't mean does he have glasses. Can he read? I really do think he's illiterate. Anyway, and no, the stakes aren't the same for Marquez as they are for Donald Trump, who people stupidly voted in for president. And it's your fault whether you voted for him or you stayed at home and did not vote. Moving on, and I said what I said. Move on. Maurice asked him, basically, well, the main issue is the children, right? And he says, no, the main issue is the children and Trish. I said, so he's not finished with this relationship. Not that that's news to me or you as a viewer, but nevertheless. Marquez says him and Ken are doing well. And he said, after talking to Ken, he can see why Trish loves him so much because he's just like her dad. And he wasn't able to be like that for her, and that's what she wanted. I don't doubt that women who have good fathers model the expectation of their husband off of their fathers. I don't doubt that at all. I do not think that is the case with Marquez. Okay? I certainly, as somebody, I'm not gonna start. I'm not gonna tell too much about business, but there's a reason why I'm in therapy every week. Anyway, so Marquez says him and Ken are doing well. He said after talking to Ken, he can see why Trish loves him so much because he's just like her dad. Like I said, I don't know what to really do with that. It seemed like a weird thing to say, and I'm still processing. I will not be processing when I get done drinking this tequila, but nevertheless, Maurice asked him, well, what did he do for the marriage? And Marquez says, I didn't lead the marriage. I am so sick of black men acting like existing in the household is enough. It's not. It's not, because there are, quite frankly, a lot of things that I could have done without, even though I grew up with both my parents married in the household. Just saying. It's not enough to just exist. You actually have to raise kids, be there for them, your sons and your fucking daughters, to be an example of what they should expect. And if you're not prepared, then get prepared, learn, and work hard to do it, or just back off of it. Okay? I teach kids. I try to support kids in the best way I can as a teacher. I'm not saying that I haven't fallen short, and I'm going to fall short some more as a teacher. But I am not having children. If it happens, I will probably have put in a lot of thought before I find out. Like before I actually do it. It probably won't be a surprise. And that's for a reason. And I know people can differ. I'm not sitting up here saying that every time people shouldn't, just have kids, or only people who have money. I'm just saying a lot goes into raising kids, and the reason why we see so many wounded adults is because everybody makes mistakes in raising kids, because nobody is perfect and you'll fall short. And sometimes you're trying to raise a kid, you want them to be and set an example. And sometimes you're trying to raise the kid that you have, but also trying to set standards. Don't get me wrong. But Marquez, when you walk out and leave your family, that's some BS. All right. And just staying with it and then becoming toxic and trying to make the woman miserable because you really don't want to be there, but you want to say you were there, is a problem. So he said he didn't leave after the first year of marriage when he knew he didn't want to be with her or that it wasn't going to work. All to prove his father wrong when he said your marriage won't last 5 years. And all I could think was maybe because y'all were young as fuck, okay, and knew each other in high school. And you did all this to prove your father wrong with a woman that you didn't even want to be with. Yeah, no, not buying it, not blaming daddy for it. If you did, you and your father's relationship must be akin to Jackie Christie and Chantel's. And I'm not going to say too much about that because honestly, I think the way this is playing out on TV is sad and pathetic. And while I don't think Chantel should have pushed her mother, I only think a daughter even crosses that in her mind, or a child even crosses it in their mind to put their hands on a parent if that's how a parent has treated them. And yes, I do know how narcissists, I'm an armchair psychologist, I know this is not a real diagnosis, but I do know, just like when people say, if you have looked at domestic violence incidents, and people have always documented, particularly police, have said the most calm person in the house is always the abuser. And that's what that looked like for me, right? And I know how a narcissist can create all these situations, and you're frustrated when you finally blow up, you're made to look like you're crazy. And we also have to ask, like in our head, like, why would Chantel, even though she hit her mother first, I know I played that back plenty of times, it wouldn't even cross my mind to put my hands on my mother. That's how wild that was to me. But my mother also, when she disciplined us, and, when she spanked us or whatever, my mother never did it in a way where I didn't know why I was getting whooped. I didn't know why I was getting disciplined. And so you respected the person, because you can have fear for somebody and not have reverence. Because I feel like I had more fear of my father and not reverence. Right? So anyway, that's just what that reminded me of. But trying to prove your father wrong, I'm not even willing to blame that man right now. Marquez, you a grown-ass fucking man. Figure it out. Okay, is it me or is he constantly talking in circles? I can't stand nobody that does that shit. I can't. I cannot. He says I couldn't leave her. Then he said, I know she feels like I left her, but I couldn't leave her. I said, what the hell? I said, this ninja wants to be on TV so bad and make his money in a way that requires no real work. I can't. Okay, anyway, I don't even think Trish would be tripping about child support. I just think, actually, maybe she would. I don't think Ken is tripping about child support. He just wants this over with. But Trish is trifling too. Anyway, because this wouldn't be a problem if she wasn't. Maurice gives some wild analogy that we can't follow because that's what he does. Because he is just like, a notch or two above Marquez, at least in his PR. So Marquez said that Trish, he was like, well, Trish never said she didn't want me. He was like, that's what divorce means. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Maurice, I have to give it to you. You were right about that. He said, I filed. And Maurice said, well, she did too. And he said, that's because Ken made her. I gave her to Ken. And I was like, oh, no. He's controlling and he's a deadbeat. And he likes being able to still have that connection to her to control her. This whole I gave her and I could have her if I wanted to is delusional. But it is clear from watching Trish and Ken's dynamic that Trish and Ken can't make her do shit. Because otherwise she would have been divorced. I felt like I was losing brain cells watching Maurice and Marquez conversation, and that production should have edited that. He's a liar and manipulator. And while we're on production, I just want to give a shout out to what I think is probably the high school sophomore that created the opening introduction with the party confetti that I went in on last week, because I'm sure there is some Huntsville high schooler that competed to be able to do this introduction for OWN. And it is a great job if you're a sophomore in high school. It is not if you are a freshman college and above. That's just a thought. So Tisha and her son, he just had his 18th birthday. Happy birthday. Good for him. He is a typical teenage boy. He's kind of low-key, sarcastic. You know he's going to cry when he leaves his mama. But anyway, I don't care what anybody says. Baby boy looks just like his father. Okay? And he acts like him too. And Tisha, who is his mother, Tisha, I'm going to tell you, even though, I think you don't have, you slow. I will say this. One thing I can give you, Tisha, is that you look like his college-age older sister at best. I would not guess that you're his mother. And I'm not talking about just because he looks just like his father. I would not guess that. And see, if you would have been nicer to Mel, maybe y'all could work on a skincare regimen. Because we know business acumen ain't really your strength, or it doesn't appear to be based on your low-producing results. Because let me tell you, when I said it last week, I meant it. And I've said this before about Tisha. Tisha, your skin and the way you age or lack of aging, you deserve credit for, girl. You really do. So anyway, this boy wants to go to Michigan, and he starts talking, and because Marcel's from Michigan, whatever. Boys see themselves in their fathers sometimes. And she start buying a townhouse near the campus, and he was absolutely right when he said she wasn't going to do that, because I was thinking to myself, she can't even live in Scott Manor, okay? And she was talking about all three of my kids share a bathroom. I was like, shit. It was 5 of us in the bathroom. They doing good. Anyway, so he says he's going to miss his dad a little more than his mother. And he acts just like Marcel with that sarcastic ass stuff, waiting for somebody to pop off. Hurt your mama's feelings like that, she should have bopped you upside the head. But then you may have ended up like Marquez. So I understand why she didn't. But nevertheless, and she was like, well, Marcel was the cool dad. He comes home and doesn't have to do that or whatever. Okay, Tisha. Anyway, so Trish and her daughter's dance competition, and they're back at the house, okay? They're going to meet with Marquez to draw some boundaries with him. Good luck in a boundaryless personhood like Marquez has. Did they add another lock to their door that we don't know about? Of course they didn't. Anyway, Trish feels like it's not going to go well. She tells us in the confessional. Of course not. Y'all get off on fighting with each other. Maybe Mel wasn't that part of the cookout when she said they... All right, so Marquez rings the doorbell, and then he walks in without being told to come in. And all I could think was, Trish, shut the hell up. Lock the goddamn door if you didn't want him in there. What is with this leaving your doors unlocked? If it's that serious at this point, Ken, it's a waste of time for you. If they're that fighting like that hard, that much, baby, move on. You can find you another chick, even in Huntsville. So Marquez starts asking Ken. He walks in and is like, oh, where's my drink? I mean, can I get a drink? Like, waiting for, Ken to serve him, because he knew Trish wasn't going to do it. And I was just like, see, here we go. This is not about the kids, like I told y'all. So he talks about the incident that we never even got the privilege and benefit to see play out. Now, if y'all going to do something extra like that, we as the viewers should at least see it. But I imagine that's what happens when you have a producer who wants to be a YouTuber, who then wants to also be in charge of the cast and then host all the reunions. That shit, even with Andy Cohen, I think is a drag. I don't think the same person should be doing reunions. That stuff is tired, and then it becomes controlling. And no, I mean, honestly, Carlos King, we know, has more control over production. Andy Cohen is just the face of that. He ain't signing nobody's checks. That white man been lying about that since the beginning. Anyway, moving on. So Ken brings up boundaries, and I think Marquez would like to be in a romantic relationship with Ken. That's just what I think, okay? Ken's testosterone will balance out Marquez's estrogen, and he can get Trish back by stealing her man. That's what I think the whole plot is, okay? So he said boundaries should have been drawn when they started dating 2 to 3 years ago. I'm not gonna lie, to give you a little kiki. All right. Anyway, when they started dating, when Ken and Trish started dating, he should not have walked in, okay, in their home without somebody saying come in. But my thing is, lock your door. Like, just lock your door. Because if somebody walks in my New York apartment uninvited, which they never would, because I ain't gonna forget to lock my fucking door, and I keep a bat, okay, by my door on purpose, just in case. Okay, anybody get to knocking too loud, including Amazon, just, you know, just miss me, okay? And my thing is, why don't you, while we're going back through the incident, ask if Zarya unlocked the door for her father? He was like, oh, she had 2 drinks in her hand and a bag. And if she didn't unlock the door, then Trish, you should just lock it. Like, it's just stupid to me. Anyway, Trish goes to the door when there's another knock, and her friend comes in, and probably because Trish invited her over in the midst of this. That's what I mean. They like this back and forth. Marquez offered her friend a drink and then asked for a drink. Now, how the hell you gonna offer somebody something in a house that ain't yours, and you can't even get a bottle of water there? Anyway, they don't care if you're dehydrated. They want you to pass out in the midst of shooting. So they keep saying, let's keep it on the kids, while they use the kids as a way to stay in conversation with each other and fight, but still be in each other's lives and make money off this show. Ken, one thing I think you need to do is slow your roll. By saying the kids aren't traumatized, and, you know, Ken made the point, while Xavier misses you and certainly wants that relationship with his father, that neither one of the kids are experiencing trauma. And then Marquez is like, no, they're experiencing trauma through the mother. No, if they're experiencing anything, it's through the both of you. That's number one. Okay? And we don't know what these kids are experiencing. And a lot of times you won't know until they move further into adulthood, and when they're out the house and feel free enough to talk to you about it. We don't know what they're experiencing. And y'all talk more about them than it appears to them. And that's a problem, because don't think them kids don't hear all that fighting. I don't care if your son technically turned 18 and is going to college, Trish and Marquez. I'm telling you, the fact that he, even at his graduation barbecue, had to tell his father, you know, look, stop. He's parenting his parent. And that's not a good feeling. Because that means even in the midst of him being calm and thoughtful, that his parents have taught him at least what to do while not modeling what to do. And the resentment starts to get as you get older and you get away from it. Anyway, so we don't know, like I said, what they're experiencing. And the fact that the son seems to have to parent his father and is pulled into the two parents' arguments, and we've seen that on camera, is traumatizing. Kids don't always share or understand what's happening when it happens, okay? Things like divorce are finite, and while they may be painful, they're at least clear. And they've been living in this in-between space because their parents are so freaking immature to where they can't. It took Trish forever to draw papers. We didn't see her draw papers till last season. And then, you know, he's lying about the paperwork, you know, all this other stuff. So it's like, yeah, my parents are still married. They're still my parents, but then my father disappeared for a while. Like, it's a bunch of BS. And at the end of the day, even if Ken does incur some of their wrath as they get older, they're going to see it as their mother and father's responsibility, regardless of Ken, to have protected them from this. And they should. Okay? There's a reason why I'm in Anyway, so Marquez saying Ken can't tell him anything about his kids when he sees them every day, and is there for them, is bull. It's bull. But Trish is also to blame. This is me talking. By not drawing up those divorce papers sooner so she could rip the Band-Aid off, and those kids wouldn't have to work in this unclear, fuzzy space because of the adults. Marquez says that he's Ken's just Trish's boyfriend. Ken says yes. While those are your kids, at the end of the day, this is my family. Now that took me a second. But as far as I'm concerned, family is who loves you, not necessarily who you're related to. Okay? Marquez says, well, I gave you money. Ken said, yeah. And Ken got specific. You gave me $500. He was like, do you know how much this stuff costs? I was like, damn stuff costs that much? Ooh. I want to enjoy New York Restaurant Week that goes on for 3 weeks in the summer. But thank you for telling me, Ken, because I know if it costs that in Huntsville, I can't imagine what that kind of stuff would cost in New York. Anyway, if you were doing, what you were supposed to do, Marquez, you wouldn't be able to count it up like that for an event. Say, oh, I didn't give you money. The fact you had to hand it to another person already says you aren't the parent. And you said it to Ken. You didn't say it to Trish. That's a problem. So, low key, in fairness, they are entertaining. They are far more, and by they, I mean Marquez, Trish, and Ken are far more entertaining than Big Lou and Tiffany were. I don't even know how I remember them people's names. Anyway, he brings up that the kids are not on the paperwork. And Trish and Ken, without even looking at each other, were like, you're a liar. That's not true. Of course they're on the paperwork. And, y'all, filing divorce papers and lying about not having kids is so not a thing. And he was like, okay, fine, then go get the edited version. I'm like, you are so dumb. Something is wrong with him. Like, all the way wrong. And no, I don't think him and Trish are the same kind of screwed up. I don't. He's out there. He's Ray J out there. They went and got the papers and both kids were on there. I was like, you're a lie. That sounded like a lie, honestly. Anyway, Marquez said the judge will reassign the case. And they were like, yeah, because you contested it. Ken was pissed. Ken should have been moved that furniture around to get his ass out of his house. Marquez is, yes, crazy as hell, but at the end of the day, Ken, I understand why you didn't want to tear up your own house for this sucker. Anyway, y'all be sure to let me know what y'all think. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment. Just make sure you're respectful of people. Anything I missed or I don't know about, feel free to put it down in the chat. And I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.